Hi, I'm Gary Bauman of the Southeast Asia Travel Show, and I'm hosting this edition of the Inspiring Women in Travel Asia, or IWTA, video series. My guest today is Gai Tyrrell, Managing Director, Australasia of the Globus family of brands. Looking at Gai's impressive resume, there'll be some fascinating things to talk about over the next 30 minutes. So firstly, Gai, welcome. How are you doing? And how's life in beautiful Sydney right now?
Hi, Gary. Well, it's nice to be here. Spring in Sydney is obviously fabulous. And it's a fun time of year. There's lots of sporting finals on, and the harbour's looking as glorious as ever.
That's great. That's great to hear. Beautiful, beautiful place to be. So before we start talking about your career and your achievements and your aspirations, let's get back to basics and let's talk about travel. Gai, what does travel mean to you, both personally as well as professionally?
Personally, travel means a lot of fun, but most of all, it's been my absolute education, Gary. I have learnt so much of what I know through traveling the world since I was a very young girl. Professionally, travel means to me fulfilling people's dreams. Having been selling travel for 3 decades now, that's how I see it. It's selling people and fulfilling their dreams. So it's a pretty good business to be in.
That's true. So you talked there about traveling the world since you were a young girl. Was travel always something you wanted to do as a career?
No, not at all. Um, uh, Going through school, I actually didn't have any idea what I want to do. And I think that's a big pressure for kids still today, to be honest. Um, Unlike my older siblings, accountant, lawyer, home economist, physiotherapist, lots of people know what path they want to take. And I had no idea. So I was fortunate. I convinced my mum and dad to let me work for a year. And then I went traveling for a year. And when I boarded that Qantas aircraft to come home from London just before that Christmas, and the flight attendant at the door said to me, "G'day, welcome home." It was at that moment I was flying straight home to Melbourne to get a job with Qantas, and that's what I did.
Fascinating. So let's bring it forward a little bit to right now. Your current position, you're Managing Director, Australasia of Globus. Tell us a bit more about your role and the Globus family of brands.
Well, the Globus family of brands is an amazing organisation. It was started over 90 years ago in Lugano in Switzerland by a man called Antonio Montegazza. He started a business of rowing people across Lake Lugano, and he did it as local transport, and then he started to do it for tourists, and then over the ensuing decades that grew into a global coach organisation, and then further down the track into a river cruise. Avalon Waterways is the name of it, and our coach businesses are Globus, which is high-end coach touring, and Cosmos, which is sort of value for money, everybody touring. And wow, we now have, I only looked at this statistic yesterday, Gary, we now have over 450 different vacations you can choose across 70 countries in the world. So it's quite an incredible story. And his son Sergio, he's in his 90s, still runs the company today. It's a beautiful culture. They're a very caring culture. They value their customers like nothing on earth. And that's what attracted me to the organisation 4 years ago. And I have the great joy of leading Australia, New Zealand, and we have 10 partners across Asia and South Africa. So it's a big region, so I have to do a lot of travel. But I have to say, I'll never complain about traveling again after having the pandemic and missing it for a few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's happy days.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that leads into my next question, because you actually took on this current position in 2018. Everything has changed since then. As you said, we've been through a pandemic. We've been through great change in the world of travel and tourism. Just reflect a little bit on what your experiences have been over the last 2 or 3 years.
I think probably the big standout for me was as every week went by, we seemed to be asking ourselves a question for the first time. It's almost like having your first baby, Gary. And everyone had to change, and we had to adapt, and we had to be agile, and we had to do it quickly. And so I guess for me, the key thing was holding people's hands as a leader and helping them understand how fast we needed to move with this and change and adapt, and also our customers as well. I think that's probably the big standout for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you know, your role involves a lot of travel. For a lot of the periods over the past 2.5 years, we haven't been able to travel very much or even at all. Are you back on the road? Are you traveling again?
Yes, since March this year, it's been non-stop. I've made sure that I have touched every one of our partners and customers in person. And it's good that it's back and travel's back again. More importantly, I think the first thing that came back was probably domestic travel. Then obviously people visiting their family and friends. Then I think for those that were tired, there's been a bit more of the fly and flop. And our segment has finally recovered now. We've done better in the back half of 2022 than I ever expected. And next year's looking fantastic. And I think 24 will boom. I think we'll get to a point of struggling to get capacity in 2024 and onwards.
It's fascinating to hear and great to hear. I wanted to talk a little about one of the standout. I stalked you on LinkedIn, Gai, so I've been looking at your career. And I wanted to ask you about one of your roles, because you mentioned that when you were traveling for that year before you started your career, you took that Qantas flight back to Australia. And you actually spent many years working for Qantas, working through different roles in that organization. That was a different time of travel. But what did you learn from those experiences working for, you know, one of the world's great carriers?
The foundation, the training was absolutely incredible, and I put down a lot of my success to the grounding that I got starting at Qantas in reservations, and it had such a wonderful shared purpose as a culture. Qantas did, and I hope we see that return to those levels again, of course. But my 13 years there was just incredible. And yes, I really learned all about customer service then, Gary.
It was working for Qantas what really solidified in your mind that travel was your future path?
Definitely. And also, I was quite a gutsy young girl. You know, I was every 18 months to 2 years, I applied for the next level of role, the next level of role, the next level of role. And so often I was surrounded by individuals that would say, oh, really? You're not going to get that. Isn't it too soon? But, you know, it's so important to put yourself out there and back yourself and be courageous. And you'd be surprised at just how far you get ahead. Well, that's certainly been my experience, and it's certainly what I talk to all of the young people in this organisation about. You know, be seen, be heard, stand out, throw your ideas up in the air for everybody to talk about. You know, it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to go through all the details of your LinkedIn profile, Kay, but something that I thought was quite interesting, having worked for Qantas, is you also spent time working for Hawaiian Airlines. Tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, so that was fantastic, actually. So Hawaiian Airlines approached me. That was the role before this one, actually. They'd been flying to Sydney for 25 years, but they'd always had a third party represent them. They had never actually set themselves up in their own commercial right. So I came on board to do that for them. So employ all their people, both here, New Zealand, so Sydney, in Auckland and in Brisbane, employ all their airport staff, their commercial staff, sales staff, finance staff. And yeah, it was terrific. Also a beautiful culture, that airline, really, really lovely, and all about customer service.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear. Guy, I wanted to talk just very briefly about your forecasts that you were talking about. 2023, you think is going to be strong. 2024 is booming. The back end of this year, you said, is quite strong. What changes are you noticing, though, among customers? Has the pandemic changed the way people are booking, the way they're looking at travel?
So for our segment of coach touring and river cruising, normally people would purchase 9 months to 12 months out. People that have travelled this right now as we speak, they've made instant decisions to go the minute that things opened up. So we're actually hoping the booking period does actually come in. But of course, for now, you know, there's not really a set trend, you know, as such. So, but we are monitoring it very quickly, but we are seeing shorter booking window for sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting response. I mean, and you alluded to that. I mean, do you think that could just be a response to the pandemic, that people want to make choices and then later on, you know, perhaps the older trends will start to resurface? Or, you know, is this just an entirely new world?
They might. I think also, Gary, what's important is if 2023 is as busy as we believe it will be, people will have to start booking further out again to actually get the space that they to get access to the space that they need.
Yeah.
And that's not just us, you know, that's airlines as well.
Yeah.
You know, we do still need more airline capacity back.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Gai, that you travel a lot for business, in fact, all the time. How do you manage your own travel? I mean, how far in advance are you setting your travel trips? You know, you mentioned next year is going to be a very, very busy year for the business. What about you personally? How are you sort of adjusting your own travel schedule to this changing environment?
Oh, I'm usually well planned about 4 months out.
About 4 months out.
And once again, because of the airline situation at the moment and capacity, Gary, you have to be organised as you can, as soon as you can.
Yeah, that's true. So where are you heading for the rest of this year, Gai?
Well, having been to Europe twice, America twice, South Africa and Asia, I only have one trip left, and it's to visit my wonderful team in New Zealand next month. And then I'm looking forward to a nice summer break with the family.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. So looking at the industry as it is right now, and over the past 2 or 3 years of your new role, what have you learned personally? I know you've mentioned what you learned professionally, but what have you learned personally over the past 2 or 3 years?
Oh, to be more patient. Yeah, to be more patient, I think.
Were you not patient enough?
No. No, I have a sales background. Of course, I'm not patient. So, you know, I learned to be more patient, and I tried to be I mean, I've always been a good communicator, but on my communication just went to another whole level. It really had to get us through as a team, and also personally as a family. I didn't work from home for very long. That was never going to be successful for the family, Gary. I make too much noise on these calls.
So looking back further, looking back to the Gai Tyrrell that was flying back to Australia on that Qantas flight, having traveled for a year overseas, and then looking back through your career and your lifetime, now what would you tell that young person coming back to Australia? What have you learned over your career?
Self-awareness, number one. Self-awareness, absolutely number one. And that is absolutely crucial. And back to what I said earlier, have courage. Put yourself out there. Back yourself. You know, keep just pushing for that next gig, and don't be shy to put your hat in the ring. You get so many great learnings, you know, even if you don't get the next job every single time. Important to try and find a good role model and or mentor. I think I've been fortunate with that through my career, and I make sure that I dedicate enough time to be a mentor to at least one individual in the industry a year. I think that's very important. And if you're not having fun, get out. Most importantly.
Absolutely true. Would you say that during the pandemic, your thoughts about what you'd learned changed? Did it make you rethink what you were doing?
You mean as far as working in travel?
Yeah, and your whole career path, did it make you think about the future a little bit more?
No, 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 I'm very, very passionate about travel. I wasn't going to change paths. I knew this. I knew that things would return. It was just about hanging in there until it absolutely did.
Yeah.
So no, and I'm busy encouraging as many people as I can to come back, and they will, they will, they will. We're recruiting again. It's not been easy, but I find as each month goes by, it's getting better and better. So that's a really positive sign, Gary.
Yeah, you sound really positive, and you've talked about upward curves of positivity for next year and the year after. Where do you see the sort of key opportunities for growth and expansion?
Uh, I think still domestic. I think domestic for a bit longer. Um, we built a domestic product during the pandemic, which was an exciting thing to do. And some of the key parts of Australia, Western Australia now, the Kimberley, um, our tours are very full. We've already sold out the Kimberley next year, which is extraordinary. Um, but we're seeing that people are chomping at the bit to go back to Europe. They really are.
Yeah, right,
They
right.
really are. So, and as a little bit more capacity comes, Europe will get really busy again, no question.
Yeah, and Aussies are great travelers. I mean, we know that. But what has been interesting during the pandemic has been, I mean, you have such a big, such a vast, such a beautiful country. Is these opportunities to go and see a little bit more of it, and that seems to have resonated with Australian travelers. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. This that just in my own circle of friends, I look at how much more of our own country that they've gone and seen during this time. I think that's been a really positive thing, and it's been important for our own economy as well. So I do hope that that continues as well.
Yeah. And just one final question, Gay. You live in such a fabulous, beautiful city. You've got all the harbour landscapes there. Walking around Sydney, does it feel like Sydney is back? Is Sydney back to its old self?
Yes, I had a friend visit that lives down south yesterday, actually, to the city, and he couldn't believe how busy the city it was again. So it is definitely alive and kicking here.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And personal vacation, where's on your hot list? You've traveled around the world. Where haven't you been to, and where would you like to go?
I'm always tempted to just go back to chaotic Rome, Gary. And we have this beautiful winter product called Globus Escapes in Italy. And I'm trying to convince my husband to do that. Rome in winter.
Rome at any time. What a fabulous city.
Exactly. Exactly.
Gai Tyrrell, thanks very much for joining me today. Thanks for your time and your insights. Great chatting with you.
Pleasure indeed, Gary.